everybody, it's Danny from Worldwide Vets here, and today we're joined by Dr. Marock of NSPCA in South Africa. Dr. Marock, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, well, thank you for having me.
Dr. Marock, if you wouldn't mind, obviously you're one of the Golden Star nominees, so people may have read a little bit of what you do online, but would you mind just going into a bit more detail about the work that you do?
Okay, so I can't really discuss the work that I do without explaining the organization that I work for. I work for the National Council of SPCAs in South Africa. It's a bit of a unique organization as an NGO, an animal welfare body, in that it's quasi-governmental. It has its own active parliament, and it has been recognized as the highest court in the land. The Constitutional Court of South Africa has been the authoritative voice on animal welfare. The primary legislation combating animal cruelty in South Africa is the Animals Protection Act, number 71 of 1962, and the Constitutional Court confirmed the NSPCA's guardianship of this act. So the work that I do with them is amongst their units. The NSPCA oversees about almost 70 SPCAs throughout the country. And then inspectors within the NSPCA are categorized into a number of specialized units. First of all, like I said, the control or the checking compliance of the SPCAs, that would be the NSPCA Society Liaison Unit. Then you have the Wildlife Protection Unit, the Farm Animal Protection Unit, Special Projects Unit, and I'm going to be killed for leaving people out here. So I'm not good at training. Yeah, the training unit. And very importantly, the Research and Ethics Unit. So all of these units play an important function. We're qualified inspectors, which are law enforcement officers. And I provide what we could call veterinary support to them throughout a number of functions, which I think in our discussion will come out.
Yeah. No, that's great. Thank you so much. And as somebody who provides veterinary support to these units, what does a typical day or week in your life look
like? So it's very difficult to predict what's going to happen due to the reactive nature of the work.
Yeah.
But basically, if I can say the work that I do within the units, for instance, let's say the Farm Animal Protection Unit, I will assist them with standards and codes that are being formulated through national bodies. For instance, we're busy working on the pig welfare revision, and we're starting again on the poultry code that hasn't been developed yet. I assist them at the the World Organization for Animal Health, which is a global body. And I actually sit on their behalf on the International Coalition for Animal Welfare, which is the body that works with the international codes that are developed at the international level. Obviously much weaker than South Africa. And it's not my favorite work to do because you have to incorporate countries that don't have the animal welfare legislative framework that's in South Africa. So I would also, when needed, go out into the field and do inspections with them, mostly high-profile inspections when there's cruelty at farms, when there's cruelty in abattoirs, when there's cruelty during transport. One of the things which also I think might come up a bit later in our conversation would be something like the live exploitation of animals by sea. And the roles that I've played assisting them in their great work in the civil courts, in the in the civil courts, in the criminal prosecutions, in ensuring that animals don't that are unfit do not get onto these ships in the interim while it's still happening, as well as just day-to-day telephone calls, giving advice on an animal that's collapsed, to see if there is contraventions which they are trying to formulate. Then pretty much in the other units, I do a lot of similar work, and that would include, say, the special projects unit, where we work on issues such as research into humane rodent control, our system in their dogfighting activities, prosecutions. To tell you that I don't know of anyone who's been involved with more prosecutions and successful prosecutions than I have. So it is something that I'm quite proud of. Wildlife poaching using animals. Normally, when this happens, I'm in most cases the vet who examines the dogs and examines the wildlife that were captured. With the liaison units, I help them with information regarding how SPCAs can maintain biosecurity, what they should be doing in terms of issues of culling, for instance, during disease outbreaks. It's quite detailed. The other unit, which I think I left out, is public relations, communications. And that again would also provide a lot of veterinary insight, because when the media requires information, they would need some kind of verification. A good example of that would be that everyone knows that Al Kuwait vessel that stopped in Cape Town, and everyone in the world knew about it. International interviews. I took part in some of those interviews, but I assisted because I was on the vessel myself. I was part of the team that went, the NSPCA and the Cape Europe, who went in and under warrant to find what we found. And then yes, all the other units I've done that same type of work for. Wildlife facilities. I have given some assistance to our research unit. They do a lot of work. In fact, wherever research is done in the country, universities, private facilities, they are involved. And again, you can see that this is not a small organization or just a run-of-the-mill shelter type of organization. It requires a lot of scientific support. And while there are other scientific role players at the NSPCA, I just provide that veterinary aspect. And then, there's a whole bunch of other things, like I explained, advising on culling, going to sporting events like horse racing. At some of the less traditional ones, we are, and this I think would fall under the special project. No, it's moved to a different unit. I would go be the vet and to examine the horses to see who can ride and who can't, who's not fit. There's often no veterinarians in South Africa at this, so I often provide the treatment of the animals that we either scratch or get injured during these races. It's not what we want to do because we aren't pro this sport, but I have stitched up animals with large degloving wounds on the side of the track.
Yeah.
Today, after this, I'm going to be doing some research into a slaughter method that we're trying to get adopted. I can't really speak about it at this point. So I think I've given you a bit of an idea, and maybe you could ask me more questions, because I mean, I can't. It's so varied that there's things that I'm clearly leaving out.
Yeah, I think it's really cool that you went so in depth. I think that a lot of people, when they think of SPCA in general, they just think of the face value sort of shelter. They don't realize that there's all these working parts. that happen behind the scenes. So I'm really glad that you went so in depth in that. Um, what inspired you to get involved in this work? Sorry, can you still hear
Oh,
me?
we got cut off. You said when people often think of SPCAs, they think of.
The face value shelter. I don't think that everybody realizes quite the scope that happens behind the scenes. Of course, we see sort of snippets when huge cases such as the one in Cape Town came up. But I think it's really cool that we've got a little bit of an insight now to just how wide and varied the work that you do is. What inspired you to get involved in this work in the first place?
Yeah, so just before, I just want to go forward before we just move on to that. What you said, behind the scenes and where we're working. We have to fight on a lot of these issues on the standards and even regulations that we're busy working on the government with. There's actually two different cases of it. And the NSPCA is an invited, like in the Constitutional Court judgment, the Justice C.C. Kompepe actually said that the NSPCA is part of the polity of South Africa. It is a body that's part of the fabric, and that's why even with the industry, we sit in some of their bodies. They invite us and they allow us. I sit on one organization which does good work, the National Animal Health Forum, and it's very broad amongst all types of veterinary role players, the veterinary oversight bodies, the research bodies, some of the industries. So the NSPCA really does take the time and the effort to ensure that we maintain this level of high level precision advice in welfare. And I'll just go. I wasn't so involved in that, but the wildlife protection unit. I mean, they've just played such a pivotal role in the wildlife development of wildlife legislation in South Africa. Unfortunately, they had to go to court to get, for instance, the lion bone trade stopped because there was just no welfare involved. Now, if we can go back to the question that you brought forward. So what inspired me? Well, I never thought that I would really get involved in this type of work, this kind of police work, if I can say. But I was in private practice, and the then chairperson of the NSPCA just said you would be perfect in this position. And this position didn't really exist when she had said that. So I made contact with the then CEO, Marcel Meredith, who's been there for a very, very long time, has built up the organization. And anyway, I spent a year at a local SPCA managing a hospital, a welfare hospital, and most of it was mass sterilizations, treatment of indigent animals belonging to very poor people, the indigent. And the same type of work where I think the first case where I assisted the NSPCA from there was a major pit bull case belonging to a convicted dog fighter. And that went to court. It was a successful prosecution. I thought, this is actually, it feels like making a bit of a difference.
Yeah.
Then I went out to prison where pigs were farmed, and through my assistance, we did improve the welfare of the animals on that site. Anyway, I was there about a year before we discussed again about me coming to National and doing this type of work on a more full-time scale.
Yeah.
So it was never really planned, but I have to tell you that being a vet is fantastic, but doing this type of work where you can help animals at a greater scale is just so much better.
Yeah, I'm sure it's such rewarding work. I mean, you know that you're really making a difference. Um, you've clearly been doing this for a long time, and you've covered the scope of animals that you guys sort of work with. So I think that that might make my next question a little bit difficult. But is there any particular animal or case or experience during your time at the NSPCA that's really stuck with you?
Well, I think people actually ask me this a lot. And you know, is it the dog fighters who went to prison? In a case I examined the dogs and I testified against later and gave maybe aggravation in. Is it the horses that we rescued from the South African Army, for instance, which is not that easy and it's highly challenging? Probably not. Is it the 20 million rands worth of animals that are prevented or helped the Farm Animal Protection Unit through enforcement on the ground, high court cases, prevented them from going on a journey that's proven later they would have definitely died horrible deaths? I think, to be honest with you, the live export by sea is probably the thing that I really feel that we've made great inroads into. And the type of companies that have come here, they've come from other countries avoiding regulation, and the last 5 years, we've just really been working in the courts, enforcement on the grounds, prosecutions for when this goes, because it's really it's a horrendous industry. And I've spoken about this at length at conferences, locally and internationally, to veterinarians. But I think one of the things that I hold a lot to is a whole bunch of veterinarians who used to be involved in this trade, especially the ones in Australia, who were actually live export veterinarians, and who are now seeing how bad it is, basically saying, have come to grasp the trade,
Yeah.
and the work that I've done in it. And like I said, I've been invited to speak at the World Veterinary Association on this topic, at the South African Veterinary Association Congress at this topic, the African Network for Animal Welfare Conference. So it's more of a broad strokes effort that I find most rewarding.
And if you had to pinpoint your proudest achievement today, do you think that you would stick with the sea export?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
Even though it's still a work in progress, and we are now getting regulations that we are working with the government, and we're going back and forth. Definitely, I think that look, the aim must be that this cannot persist. But in the interim, there must be protections. It's high value money. So, the company that we've been in litigation and trying to enforce, we're talking about a company that's owned by a Middle Eastern rich petrostate, Kuwait. So, definitely, if you would look and say, and I don't want to say, is there an individual animal being protected? And there's 20,000, 10,000 that are being protected at a time. Is there this huge difference? But it would be due to the level of suffering that you're preventing them from, overheating over 3 or 4 days before they die.
Yeah.
Living in their own feces. So yes, I would stick with that.
Yeah, I think that would be a good one. I think I actually listened to your talk in Cape Town at the April conference, and it was very enlightening, and obviously a very horrendous topic to talk about, but obviously something that people need to be educated on. So yeah, I think that's
okay, fantastic.
I thought that you know
so you listened to me for 45 minutes droning on about this topic. don't give me a mic and let me talk about this topic.
Well, I think it's good when people are passionate.
In one of the cases, because a lot of people think we lost all of them, but we haven't. We've won quite a few of them, and a high court judge cited my knowledge in it.
Mm.
And that's only because, there's some things that really make you want to seek what's really going on here,
Mm.
especially something that's out of sight and out of mind and you can't see. Go to abattoirs, yeah. It's not out of sight, it's not out of mind. The NSPCA can if we turned away, we can just get a warrant and we can go in and see exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
When it's out in the middle of you don't really get to see, and the people involved are not that keen on um, telling you. I mean, a veterinarian that I look up to is Dr. Lynn Simpson from Australia. She was part of this industry, and after wanting to leave it, the Australian government said, no, 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 you're too valuable. Come and work for us and you can try and fix it. Well, one of her reports was accidentally uploaded to the internet. They blamed her,
Oh my goodness.
and they tried to destroy her life, and the industry pounced on it because she was basically saying what goes on there and what information is prevented from leaving the ships because these are 75, 80 million rand shipments. And, this is basically what you need to start learning about all the documents and the paperwork and the information in between. So yes, I'm glad that you listened to it, and now your audience is getting more of it.
Yeah, now my audience is going to be very interested in it. So we'll chat a little bit more later on where they can find more information about this. Um,
Well, they can go to www.nspca.co.za. That's our
okay,
website, and there is a whole section on it.
perfect. I'll pop a link for that down in the comments below, and then
Perfect,
everybody
perfect.
can go and have a look at that after. Great.
Great.
So our next question would be, obviously the work that you do is difficult in itself, but what difficulties have you faced trying to, get to your goals and do the work that you do every day?
Um, so yeah, just to start off, a lot of the work that we do is very difficult. It's cruelty. You're going to see cruelty every day that you walk into work. Um, I've seen things that, I wish I could unsee. I've, to the extent that I was brought a dog that was euthanized by the NSPCA inspectors, but I was asked to examine it, and this young German Shepherd had his jaw removed, and he was dumped on the side of the road alive, expertly, surgically. It was almost like a practice run for something else. And I've got other expert quotes because that's we work with veterinary maxillofacial surgeons and pathologists, and they definitely said, no, this dog, his entire maxilla removed, no anesthetic, and could see the dog was held down. That person, whoever did that, is still out there, and it's hard. It's a challenge to find who this person is, So sometimes witnesses to crimes. The other thing which I brought up at our annual general meeting, and this really, there were maybe people in the audience who heard this, and that is our biggest challenge can sometimes be veterinarians not wanting to get involved, especially an expert on a topic who knows the topic is something is wrong, but they're too scared of losing income, which in some ways is understandable. But it gets to a point where an expert goes the other way and signs a affidavit for a high court judge to read, which says this will not happen and this is not cruel. It's actually fine. This is probably my biggest challenge in the sphere that I work in, the sphere I work with. We also dealing with a lot of shortcomings in the Department of Agriculture, for instance. We sometimes have to do work that's not even our work, and that would include capturing rabid animals, potentially rabid animals, to euthanize them because either the department doesn't have a dart gun, or they don't have even euthanize, or they don't have enough staff somewhere. That's not an NSPCA function, but it's unfortunately we are having to do it. And I can say that with a fact that us and our constituent societies are doing a massive part of it. So yes, work that we shouldn't do. Again, I was leading up a team to ensure that over 300 wildebeest were removed off 188 hectares of ground, a military base. And the red tape and the efforts to make sure that they fed. I mean, that ground can only keep maybe 40 wildebeest.
Yeah.
So a state department like the South African National Defence Force should not have the NSPCA going there on a regular basis, check the animals are feed, writing warnings, and threatening legal action against senior commander and the minister. It takes us away from other work. Yeah. So these are the challenges that we have, all this other stuff that we shouldn't. So I would definitely say that, the veterinarians who maybe should be being ethical. I'm very proud of my profession, and it sometimes gets me a little bit emotional when I see veterinarians acting in a way that's completely unethical. And it's kind of the same, keeping quiet and even writing a report, being untruthful, is kind of the same thing.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm sure as a veterinarian yourself, it's very difficult for you to understand somebody acting in that way. If you could give one piece of advice if there's a young person out there watching this, or somebody who's already halfway through their career and thinking that maybe this is something that they would like to get involved in, this is the type of work that they would like to devote their life to, what piece of advice would you give to them?
So I think my advice would be do it. It is very fulfilling. No matter the challenges you have, I think they should follow animal welfare organizations. I think they should start looking at things that they might not be exposed to while in university. I mean, I was very upset because there's only one university in South Africa where students are taught, where veterinary science is offered. I hear there is one that's going to start up soon in another part of the country. But there was a budget cut in the library, and they started removing all the animal welfare scientific journals, where you have veterinarians who are interested in horse welfare. And I'll go back to another question, how important that was. One of the highlights in my career was when we did standard setting with endurance horse race or endurance horse body in South Africa, RASA, but we worked with Equine Veterinary Interest Group. And we put in a lot of changes into that group. And, we were so proud of it. But we couldn't just come out of it without any, just say that this is how we had to look at studies that were done by equine veterinarians who were interested in welfare. So it doesn't mean you just do this type of work. In welfare, you can go in, there's specialists in slaughter. Some people might think that's gross, whatever. But the amount of the difference, a guy like Professor Antonio Valada at Spain, the type of research output that he puts in improving the lives of how animals are slaughtered, it's a benefit to everyone, and just so animal welfare work is broad. So I just like people to go and look at that stuff and see that it's interesting, that it's not just bunny huggers or animal rightists that are we're all trying to work towards the same goal. And even with the dog fighting, my cases started becoming a lot easier with some of the international research that came out proving the scar patterns.
Yeah.
It was one of our first cases where we didn't catch the people dog fighting. There was no other evidence, simply finding the dogs, examining them, and doing the scar patterns. I think just the way I'm speaking, it shows it's an interesting topic and fulfilling at the same time.
Yeah.
So my advice would be follow that animal welfare, follow the NSPCA, follow animal welfare journals, where dog fighting scar patterns would be found. And I think I'll give an example, U4. That's a pretty decent one to look at. and you'll actually see where these fights are happening around the world in fixing these topics. And that's, if you're really interested in that type of thing, I think you'll gravitate towards it.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much. That's all from us. Is there anything that you would like to add before we close off? We're running a bit low on time, but if there's one thing that you'd like to leave this meeting with people having in their brains, what would that be?
So I'm very grateful for this nomination, and I'm grateful for the exposure. But I do really want to emphasize that my work's not possible without the backing of my organization, the fantastic inspectors, the fantastic support staff we have there, the legal teams that we work with. We just I really would like to put that forward. I know a lot of people are doing it in their own capacities, and I'm glad that they are, but I cannot divorce myself from my organization.
Yeah, yeah. And it's clear that you can't. I mean, a one-man ship trying to take on all those different things that you're covering would be completely impossible. But thank you so much for taking the time to chat to us today. It's been so interesting, and I think that it's going to be very enlightening for a lot of people. Congratulations on your Golden Star nomination. It's very clear that you're making a huge difference in animal welfare. And like I said, we'll pop the links to the NSPCA website below so that people can educate themselves further if they're interested in the various topics that we've covered. But thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today, Dr. Marock.
No, thank you. Thank you for